The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Hello everyone. Today on Aging Horizons, we'll have one of our favorite guests with us, Renee Labrie-Shanks, and we're going to be talking about the SMP program. And what you need to know is that's the Medicare Fraud and Abuse program that exists in every state, and there are people to help you take a look at any of your EOBs or medical bills if you think you've been defrauded. Stay with us. We have lots of information.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Here in Montana, we love our outdoor activities. Unfortunately, few of them are risk-free. Indeed, Montana is second in the nation per capita in head injuries that can destroy the lives of people we love. That's why you should insist your family always wear protective helmets. But you can do even more. When you fill out your vehicle registration this year, circle the Y and donate $1 to support traumatic brain injury prevention and education. Now that's using the old noggin.
Providing long-term care for someone in need is a labor of love, but it is a labor. Time apart is healthy and necessary both for the caregiver and the person receiving care. It allows each a respite, time to relax and recharge. If you're a long-term caregiver, visit the new Lifespan Respite website. Financial assistance may be available. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Wildfires rage in forests and developed areas. Where do you live? Are you familiar with your community's risk and its capacity to respond? If not, it's time to learn. Talk to your neighbors. Ask about the wildfire risk and the evacuation plans. Decide what you can do to mitigate the hazard. Everything you and your neighbors do right now might save property and lives later. If there's no group to join, form one. Get help at firesafemt.org. Paid for by FireSafe Helena and aired by the Montana Broadcasters Association.
Hi folks, welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Kimmy Everman. We got a great show today with one of our favorite guests of all time, Renee Labrie-Shanks out of Missoula. And Renee is administrator of the program, the SMP, or Senior Medicare Patrol. Hi Renee, glad to have you.
Thanks, Kimmy. Glad to be back.
Well, so you're the statewide director of the Montana SMP, and if I haven't said it yet, so glad that you're here to bring us some great information. Can you kind of give us a description of what SMP is and where the Montana SMP is located?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So Montana SMP in a nutshell empowers seniors to prevent healthcare fraud. And it is a statewide program in Montana. We're partnered, so we're at every area agency on aging across the state. And more than that, we are part of a larger national program. Like you mentioned, we're in every state and U.S. protectorate. So for those with loved ones in other areas, they can simply find us at a national website.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, Renee, why is it so important that we empower each other to understand and prevent fraud in our lives?
It's so important because when we talk about dollars lost out there, it's not just the people stealing money from the system, it's the money we're spending trying to get it back. So we're the piece of the puzzle that helps people on Medicare understand how to stop the fraud themselves, before it even happens. The fact that we lose about $70 billion to Medicare fraud annually should alarm us. So instead of chasing down those bad guys after they stole from us, let's stop them from stealing in the first place. And that's the role of SMP. And that's the role of the education that we're trying to provide to empower people. And, we got the Office of Inspector General. They're the guys with the guns and the badges that do the arresting and the case at work and the investigations. And the Department of Justice, they prosecute it. Some of these cases take years, right? So SMP is here to empower people. We want to arm them with information to keep them from falling victim. And then we do research complaints, help resolve billing issues, and things like that, because identifying the mistakes is also bringing back money. So we want to just help people with that.
And you've been with us many times when you've mentioned that so much of the fraud in Montana is actually mistaken. Correct?
Yeah, Montana is a low fraud state. We've got a lot of great providers out there doing a lot of great work. We don't have a lot of those bad actors, and some of that is they don't come to Montana because we're not an anonymous state. People know their doctors and their pharmacists. We don't have those fly-by-night shops that can open up and lead to nowhere. So, we are hopefully going to maintain our low fraud status, except with technology. We are being reached like never before. The phone, the email, it's just not doing us any favors.
So that brings me to the question, Renee, who's at risk of being targeted for fraud?
Everyone. And it's funny you say targeted because seniors are being targeted. Our information is out there. People know our ages, where we live, things like that. So our seniors are being targeted. People know that they're on Medicare, and they know that they're sitting ducks, basically, because how often does Medicare information change? It's getting more complex. We do utilize some internet, like the Plan Finder, to help people. So there's a lot of information just flying around out there. So anybody can be victim, regardless of being targeted. And the most at risk are the people who don't think that they are at risk. Actually, it's amazing, but it's been studied and it's true. So people need to be aware that anybody can fall victim and basically inoculate themselves against it by learning about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, Renee. How do we protect ourselves?
That's a great question. I think something everyone needs to know is that Medicare processes over 4.5 million claims a day. So they don't know who you saw, what service or equipment you received. But the fraudsters know this. They know that Medicare can't keep track of that. And they know something else too. They know a lot of people on Medicare are not even looking at their Medicare summary notices or their Medicare Advantage explanation of benefits.
So if they're reading that and they see something, what maybe they see the radiologist because they had her x-ray, but they didn't see that radiologist. Is that fraud?
Oh, no, but that's good that they're identifying that and asking questions, because that's the number one way to detect the fraud. Read the notice. Anything that somebody is billing in their name is going to show up on those statements. And that's for folks who are on Medicaid as well and aren't receiving separate statements. Everything, if they are duly eligible, will come through that Medicare statement first, and they can see if they can recognize the dates and the services and the providers.
And also, I think I use the example of the radiologist because it may be somebody that gave you a service that you don't know. So checking it out is still a good idea.
Yeah, it's good to ask questions, and it should make sense to you. Yeah, that makes sense that a radiologist would have read. And you can even, I've seen that before where people are seen by a provider they don't recognize, and then we Google it. Everybody can Google something and do an internet search, and that's a Dr. Missoula, and this is what they do. And it's like, okay, yes, that is something I had done. Simple things like that. But it's good to check it out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I know I myself got a bill just the other day for something, and when I opened it, I went, oh yeah, that's what that was about. I remember now. Well, Renee, we're quickly running out of time in this session, but we'll be back with lots more information. And folks, it's so important that you pay attention to what Renee talked about as the EOB or your Medicare notices, so that you know what your services have been, what's being billed, etc. If you don't know something, you can call up the SMP and they'll give you a hand, and we're going to talk about how you can get a hold of them in the next segment. So stay with us.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Today, class, we'll be discussing the term ombudsman, a word we borrowed from the Swedes and never gave back. Say you're a resident or you have a loved one in long-term care. Now, what do you do if you're not happy with the care and services you receive? You call your long-term care ombudsman, of course. Your ombudsman is available to support you and your rights. An advocate on your behalf could be the ticket. This is your home. If you have questions, the numbers right there below me have all the answers. Class dismissed.
I was angry and upset when the doctor told me I have diabetes. I just didn't want to deal with it, the needles and the diet restrictions. But after I started to learn about it, those feelings changed. I was at risk for a heart attack caused by high blood sugar. That got my attention. I started watching my diet and making sure I got enough exercise every day. I want to be around for my grandkids, and now that I know what to do, it seems like a small price to pay.
Ask your doctor about diabetes education or visit montana211.org.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Renee Labrie-Shanks today and talking about healthcare and Medicare fraud especially, and the SMP program. Hi, Renee.
Hello.
Hey, before we start talking about the more technical parts of this, let's just first give one of many times that we're going to mention this. How does a person get a hold of an SMP counselor?
Yes, in Montana, like I said, we're at every area agency on aging. And if folks call the 1-800-551-3191 number, that will connect them to their closest office on aging based on their phone. So somebody with a cell phone but moved across the state might get another agency, but we can redirect them. So call your area agency on aging or your county council on aging, and you'll get your local SMP.
Great, thanks, Renee. Now, one thing that I'd like to do, because this really helps people relate, is talk about some of the cases that you see. Can you show us a picture, so to speak, of what kinds of things are being out there right now that are scams and frauds that we need to look out for?
Yeah, I would love to do that. You know, in 2019, there were several Montana Medicare beneficiaries that contacted us to report receiving unordered braces. And they received them in the mail. They didn't recognize the doctors on their MSNs. So we collected all that information, the MSNs themselves. We looked into it and determined quickly that fraud had occurred. So we wrote up the cases and turned everything over to the Office of Inspector General and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Montana. And so once we refer that case for fraud, what happens is it is a one-way door. We're not going to be updated. They're not going to keep us in the loop of what's going on. However, we will know if the case is accepted. So we'll know if they are looking into it. So in July, 2 years later, fast forward, 2 Montana nurse practitioners who were on all of those reported fraud cases we turned in, they were the doctors, that signed off on the orders. They were sentenced for conspiring to defraud Medicare of millions of dollars. So this happened in Montana. We were part of a larger fraud case, basically. They were in other states as well. And both of these people, they served time in prison. They're currently on supervised release. And both of them, what had happened, they worked with certain companies and they received money to sign these brace orders. They basically sit in their living room and sign orders all day, basically. Yeah. They're not talking to anyone. They're not doing anything. And the telemarketers were preparing these brace orders who had no medical training or certification either. And then, the braces they get in the mail are probably a piece of Velcro, a piece of plastic junk. But Medicare, this was 14,000 orders between just the 2 of those guys. And it resulted in $9 million being paid for by Medicare. $9 million.
Wow. That is huge. So glad that somebody started to pay attention to that. I'm always proud of Montana beneficiaries because they do really try to get their benefits to stretch as far as possible. And this is one of the ways we do that. This is one of the ways that we keep Medicare strong and solvent, is making sure we root out the fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And that's great news that these guys were caught, right?
Right.
All's well that ends well. But I'd like to say not really, because they were both caught. The fraud ring was shot down, but it's still an enormous cost to taxpayers. And, with any Medicare fraud case, again, we spend the money investigating and prosecuting and incarcerating. And then these crooks don't have the money, sitting in a bank account waiting for us to take it back. Right? So there is a saying, it's you can't arrest your way out of a problem. The much more economical way to fight Medicare fraud is to simply read every single Medicare statement that comes in the mail. It's really that simple.
Right.
So just like these folks who reported to me when they saw items they didn't order from a provider they never saw. That's exactly what we need to happen. All the time.
And Renee, one thing that has happened with a person in my life is they get the MSN, and even though it says this is not a bill across the top, they think that it is. So we're reading these, we're educating ourselves what they mean. They're not a bill. They're telling you what happened, correct?
Correct.
And
yes.
An MSN is a Medicare summary notice.
Correct.
And you also mentioned EOB.
Explanation of benefits. And so folks on Medicare Advantage plans will get those monthly if they receive services.
So what should you be looking for on that MSN that comes after you've had a service?
So there's a few things. They want to make sure they recognize the provider. And like you said, maybe in a radiologist case, that something makes sense still, right? They want to recognize the dates of service, and they want to recognize the service themselves, the service that's, laid out. And the MSNs were redesigned a few years ago, and they should be much simpler to understand. And once you understand how to read them, you'll never have to understand again. Unlike different providers' bills, they're all different and everybody tracks things differently. Those MSNs are something to count on. Everything goes through them first. And as long as everything looks good on them, you don't have to worry about the rest. And, top 3 things of people to do that could stop the fraud. That's the number one thing, is reading those statements.
Great. What about the phone? Because the phone has changed. Even from when I was a kid, the phone has changed so much.
It's changed from 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So basically, stop picking up the phone. If I could get into everybody's head, stop picking up the phone if you don't know who it is. Period, end, stop. Because with spoofing, easy technology, you and I could figure it out how to spoof numbers. I can make it look like I'm calling myself, frankly. Like, you can make it look like you're calling from anywhere. And that's what they're doing. They're targeting Montana beneficiaries with spoofing numbers, making it look like the call's coming from Red Lodge or Anaconda or wherever they want, when really they're calling from out of the United States altogether.
That's right.
So quit picking up the phone if you don't know who it is. If it's important, they will leave a message. You're not going to miss anything. No doctor's office or mechanic is going to just not leave a message.
Words to live by, and we'll be right back, folks.
It is. Oh, thanks.
I was outside working on some equipment, nothing too strenuous. I started sweating and feeling out of breath.
When he felt pressure in his chest and aching in his arms, I knew we had to call 911.
First responders were there before we knew it. 38 minutes later, the doctors had restored the blood flow to my heart.
Now we know dialing 911 saved his life.
Your life is on the line.
This message sponsored by Mission Lifeline Montana.
I take care of my wife at home. When I found out training was available, I said, sign me up. It's made a huge difference.
When my husband was injured at work, it was life-altering. The classes taught me that it's okay to grieve, to ask for help, and to better cope as a caregiver.
My dad lives 4 hours away, and the Powerful Tools classes taught me that it's okay to ask for help. I highly recommend them.
To find out about this course for caregivers, go to powerfultoolsforcaregivers.org.
It's amazing the difference a little training can make.
Out here, we love our animals, from the wildlife to the livestock. Inside, it's the same. They're just like family. We keep them happy and healthy, most of the time. Secondhand smoke puts pets at risk for cancer, feline lymphoma, vomiting, increases the risk of tumors and lung cancer, even causes eye and skin disease. Secondhand smoke puts your pet's life at risk.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Renee Labrie-Shanks talking about Medicare fraud today. Renee, come back. Sorry, I stepped all over your last comment. Please finish.
No, I think it's important for people to know that, like you said, the phone isn't the phone we grew up with, and it never will be again. So don't answer it if you don't know who it is. And just know that if you do answer it, it's going to mark you as a live line, and you're going to stay on their rotation. And not only that, if you pick up the phone, stay on the phone for any amount of time, you are very attractive, basically, to others, and they're going to sell your information and make more money because they sell thousands and thousands of numbers all the time. You're going to be on more rotations. So just quit picking up that phone, and slowly you'll drop off. Try to block the numbers that you don't need, that kind of thing.
Great. That's just great wisdom, and thanks so much. And it made me think of all the times when I was a kid, I'd hear my mom pick up the phone and say, "Hello, Evermans." And I would never do that now. So you're right. Everybody needs to read their MSN, and they need to just let that thing ring, because they will call back if it's important. They will leave a message if it's important. So you have a couple of more things just about Medicare that you wanted to sort of share with us today, Renee. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I just think it's important people know anybody who is on insulin, they need to know there's a new special enrollment period for them. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 was signed in August. So it came along a little too late for some of this to be in the plan finder and for those updates to have been made in real time. So people who chose their plan last year, it would not have been factored in unless they came to a SHIP counselor. So I want people with insulin to know if they are paying more than $35 for their insulin each month, they need to come talk to a SHIP counselor or look into another plan that covers their insulin better. And if they paid more in January, February, they will have to get reimbursed by the plan themselves. So just keep that in mind. The plan can reimburse them within 30 calendar days, and they can switch a plan anytime between now and December 31st, although they wouldn't want to wait that long, to get on a plan where their insulin will be $35 a month tops. That's the cap.
And I think that's some of the best news we've had in a real long time about that benefit. As you said, it got signed into law a little too late to get into the plan finder and other written materials, but it's gonna straighten itself out, and we're gonna be great. So that's really good news. Yeah, Renee, there's so much more we could talk about, but what do you think? What do we really need to be doing to fight fraud? We talked about it in the first two segments. Let's kind of revisit some of that.
Yeah, if someone notices, someone's billed Medicare for something they didn't want or need, or they got the phone call that trying to sell them a genetic test kit or arthritis kit or anything like that, they can call Montana SMP, and we can help people understand their Medicare statements. We've got tools, we've got giveaway things that will help them understand how to read the MSN, flyers, all sorts of things. And we do help research complaints and billing issues. And then we refer the fraud if there is something that looks like it's fraud. So if someone isn't sure how to read their statements, give us a call. And if somebody wants to report healthcare fraud, give us a call.
You know, Renee, another thing that we haven't yet talked about that I just want to briefly touch on is, you know, we have highly trained folks that are helping in these positions as well as paid staff as SMP folks. They stay up on all the newest stuff, but what if they're not in Missoula? What if the person that I'm not in Missoula? Where do I find an SMP person?
Their closest office on aging. So if they're in Glendive, they go to the Action for Eastern Montana. You know, if they're in Hamilton, they go to Ravalli County Council on Aging. Every county will have some coverage, and that's who they, and if they call that 1-800-551-3191 number from their phone, it should connect them with their closest office automatically.
And Renee, again, I want to reiterate that it doesn't mean that you're being defrauded if you find something that isn't correct in your mind, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, I do like that people will question it. I mean, if anything seems just strange, doesn't make sense, doesn't add up, give us a call. We can look into it.
Right, and it won't cause you any harm at your provider's office if you're looking into this, correct?
Oh, no. I mean, that actually is the first step, that people should just call their provider and say, I don't understand this. Can you help me understand this? That's it. And we're not adversarial either. That's what we would do. We're helping so-and-so. We're advocating for them. We're just helping them understand this. Can you help me understand this?
Right.
So it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important because, you know, Montana is such a small town at heart in so many ways. And folks sometimes don't want to reach out because they're afraid they might cause a problem or hurt someone in the process. And that just isn't the case here.
No, and I hope it never will be. But they can look at, we've got right now things up on our website. It's out of Missoula, so it's on MissoulaAgingServices.org, but there is SMP, its own page under services. We've got videos, we've got links, we've got more information, helpful tools, and every office has healthcare trackers or envelopes so people can keep their statements, things like that. So call your local SMP office in Montana and get whatever you need from whatever you're looking for.
Well, Renee, thanks so much. It's been awesome having you here. I hope you'll come back again soon. And thanks so much for what you're doing for beneficiaries out there and finding fraud.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. And folks, remember, this is not brain surgery, but it can be difficult. So if you can't figure out something, give a call. Call that 1-800-551-3191 number, and you're going to be able to get a hold of somebody who can help walk through the steps with you and get you on track with your medical bills. Remember, read every Medicare notice. For Aging Horizons, I'm Kim Yeverman. Thanks for being with us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.